You're listening to Adoptees On, the podcast where adoptees discuss the adoption experience. I'm your host, Haley Radke, and this is a special episode in our Healing series, where I interview therapists who are also adoptees themselves, so they know from personal experience what it feels like to be an adoptee. Let's listen in. Leslie Johnson is a fellow adoptee and licensed therapist who works to help other adoptees connect the dots of their story and live authentically. Welcome, Leslie.
Thanks, Haley. It's great to be back.
I absolutely love our chats, and I think they're so valuable for my audience. And I have a question actually from a listener. So why don't I read that for you?
Okay, great.
Leslie said it was important to know your narrative as a way to heal trauma. I don't know mine. I don't know really anything about how I came into the world. I don't even know who my father is. Half of my ancestry is a big black hole, and society tells me to be grateful for that. How do we move forward without knowing our first chapter? How do I find my identity?
That's a great question, and certainly one that I witness working with my clients regularly. There's a huge number of adopted people that don't know big chunks of their narrative. And I guess, I think part of knowing who you are is knowing where you came from. And for adoptees, whether they were adopted transracially or domestically, there's oftentimes big pieces or even small pieces that they don't know and have to go on a quest and try to find these missing pieces. And sometimes they can't. I know for me, I work with some teenagers, many teenagers, and also adults who were adopted transracially who may never know their actual story. And so that's a really tricky question to answer. I think part of it is doing the best to fill in those holes. Who can help? Talking to other adoptees that maybe share similar experiences, asking adoptive parents to give and help, fill in those gaps to the best of their knowledge. I know some people that I've worked with have contacted the orphanages they were at in search for those pieces. And sometimes it is reconciling that all the pieces aren't going to be gathered. So then what do you do with that? You grieve that loss and then work with what you have, because I think we're a sum of all of our parts. And sadly, it's sometimes working with what you do know and have.
Well, when I approached you about talking about this topic, I extended, what is identity formation? What is that?
Right. Well, I think it's how do we know about ourselves? How do we know who we are? And part of that is where we are, our environment, the people around us. And then part of that is also where we came from. And I think that a lot of times it's been my experience that generally the teenage years are the times when where people are looking to see who they are. And all teens, adopted and not, are trying to find out who they are, what they want to do, where they want to go, who they want to be. And for non-adoptees, you're kind of already, you have something to sort of model yourself. You can see yourself mirrored in your parents' faces. Maybe you have a long genealogical story of who your relatives were, who your genetic biological ties were. But for the adopted person, oftentimes they don't have those pieces. So it's a time when adoptive parents can really help. They can share the information that they know that they might have not felt comfortable sharing up until that time. I think support groups are a great place to talk about the issues of identity and who am I among other. And I know in my teen group, that's a big thing we talk about is who am I? I think the support and education is a really big piece if there's not the actual information. And if there is the actual information, it's a time for parents to start really sharing it and providing an open environment, an open stage for their child's questions.
So how do you make up for that loss of genealogical history?
There's no easy answer to I think most adoptees who don't know their history spend a lot of time. I've referred to it before with you, and I know you're familiar with Betty Jean Lifton's The Ghost Kingdom, that fantasy world of, they must be this, or what if I wasn't adopted? What would my life look like? Do I resemble my first mother? Do I have habits of my biological father? So that just, I would imagine, gets exacerbated when you really don't have an option of finding out the truth in some of those situations.
Mm-hmm. So are there any things that you would recommend? So if we've got this void and what else can we fill it with if we're not going to get answers and we don't want to spend all our whole life in the ghost kingdom? What can we fill that void with?
Well, I think support, education. I think what you're doing with the Adoptees On podcast is providing such a wonderful, helpful place for education and support groups where people that have similar experiences, maybe not identical, but similar, where a person can get that loss validated. I think situations like that can be really, really, really helpful. Finding a community of some sort that understands what your experience is.
Identity formation really takes off in the teen years. Is that right?
Yes.
So what can we do during that time, and even then in adulthood, when we're looking back and we might have been missing some of those pieces? What are some things that are supposed to be happening during that time?
Well, I think you're correct. I think adolescence is the time when all people are trying to figure out who they are and where they came from. And for the adopted person, that's more difficult if they don't know. So this is really a time, and I work with adoptive parents coaching on how to talk about their child's history and how to help them navigate some of these questions and help their child start to connect the dots of their story so they have that coherent narrative. This is a time for parents to really get their anxieties in check, because I know a lot of parents have, if part of their child's adoption story has some negative pieces, they're worried about sharing that with their child. Is my child going to go on to be like their biological father, or, resemble their first mother's bad habits? Or on the flip side of that, is my child going to, if I share information, is my child going to want to search, and then what's going to happen? And so really helping empower adoptive parents to handle these situations and know that the truth is their friend and the truth is also their child's friend.
Yeah, I think that's so true, because a lot of us, just having that question mark is so paralyzing. And I remember, you're too afraid to ask your adoptive parents anything.
Absolutely. There's that sense of loyalty, even with parents who are saying, I'm here for you. I want to answer your questions. I have this information. I have these pictures. I still see that it's almost like we're coded with this idea that we have to be loyal to, we have to be loyal to our adoptive families, and that somehow wondering about our biology is a disloyalty, and it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. Everyone deserves to know where they came from, mm-hmm. and the circumstances of their birth, the circumstances of their adoption. Everyone.
All right. So if you're an adult already and you've passed those teen years and you've maybe missed some of those steps in forming your identity, or you filled it in a maladaptive way, I suppose, what can we do to fill in the gaps or address things, or even how do we know if we're missing something?
Well, I think that's a good question. How would we know if we were missing something? I think you don't know what you don't know. But if your experiences land you in therapy, or you pick up a book on adoption and things start to click, it's really, I don't believe it's ever too late. I mean, that's kind of why I'm so passionate about the work that I do. I don't think it's ever too late. I recently have had people in their 60s and 70s come in and want to put this stuff together. So you start to reparent yourself. If you didn't get it then, okay, how can you talk to yourself in the way you wish? And I'm making this sound like it's super easy and it's not, but it's beautiful and it's reparative. How can you address those things you didn't get? And maybe it's searching when you're older. Maybe it's having a conversation as an adult with your adoptive parents in an adult way. Did you know anything? Do you know anything? Why didn't you tell me? I think there's a lot you can do if you discover that you didn't get what you needed or wanted when you were younger.
And whenever I introduce you, I always introduce you and you say, helping adoptees connect the dots of their story. And what does that mean to you, Leslie? What does it mean for someone to have all their dots connected?
So what it doesn't necessarily mean is having all the information. So when I say, I just believe in general that good mental health is being able to connect the dots of your story, meaning the good stuff that's happened, the bad stuff, the joys, the sorrows, the fears, the grief, the loss, and being able to tell your story in a coherent way, which is inclusive of everything. So a person who was adopted is incorporating perhaps the grief and the loss, perhaps the reunion, perhaps all the other things that have happened, and they're able to talk about it in a way that's coherent and integrated. So I think when I say connect the dots of your story, I mean connecting the pieces of your life in an integrated way and being able to talk about it. There may be a part that always feels like there's something missing. And that's not to say you can't have a good life noting that, I think it just depends on the person.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, because we talk so much about healing and we're trying to connect the dots and stuff, but just acknowledging maybe there is just going to be a void, and that can be okay too.
Yeah. I think I think each person's story is unique and each person's experience is unique. And that's not to say we can't get comfort from others who've had similar experiences and validation, but how people handle their own unique story is always different. And I would say I think it's okay to continue. I think it's okay to hold a space for that grief and loss if it's still there, Mm-hmm. If it's still there, it's still there. And while it's there, what can you acknowledge in your present life to continue to be in the present and live a full life in the present while there's still that grief and loss of the past? It's like a dual awareness. When our past experiences are hijacking our ability to live in the present, for the most part, then we know we need to get support, whether that's therapy or a support group or call a friend. I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you asked earlier about what adults can do to kind of, if they realize they didn't get what they needed, or in terms of this identity formation. And there's a couple books that I really like, that I recommend for both the adoptive parents that I work with to learn more about the teen voice, especially in the identity formation years. And I also think they'd be great for adults to read. There's something curative about reading books that maybe are focused more for teens, and you can get a lot out of that, even if you're not a teen. So one of them is Dear Wonderful You, and it's letters to adopted and foster youth from adoptees. Have you read this one?
No,
Yeah,
I haven't.
it's really good. Yeah, Dear Wonderful You, letters to adopted and foster youth. It's edited by Diane Renee Christian, and it's good. It's just a bunch of letters from adult adoptees and foster youth to teen adoptees. And then the second one is Pieces of Me, Who Do I Want to Be? Voices for and by adopted teens. And again, that's just another kind of compilation of writings and essays and poems by adopted teenagers. And that's edited by Robert Ballard. They're both really good. And then I think a really good book for adoptive parents, especially during the teen years, is Beneath the Mask by Diane Riley of CASE, which is the Center for Adoption Support and Education.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I would also throw out that I'm also available for coaching and consultation when people get in sticky spots.
Yeah. And where can we contact you online, Leslie?
You can contact me. My website is yourmindfulbrain.com, Twitter at Leslie A. Johnson. And my other information is just on my website, phone number and everything.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You can find all of our other healing episodes at adopteeson.com/healing. Today, I have a big ask for you. I have been podcasting for 1 year, and I have 22 amazing people that have decided to stand with me and support my work on Patreon. That is a website that takes monthly pledges to help sustain my work in producing episodes just like this for you. If you would like to stand with me and my other 22 supporters, visit adopteeson.com/partner and you can find out all the details. I am hoping that I could get to 30 supporters, and that would make a huge difference in the way I'm able to bring you these episodes. So thank you so much for celebrating with me. Over 30 episodes, 1 full year of podcasting, and I look forward to sharing so much more time with you in your earbuds, in your car speakers, wherever you listen to me. Thanks for listening. Let's talk again next Friday. Oh, and don't worry, I did not forget about the giveaway. As an anniversary gift to you, the listener, I have been giving away copies of You Don't Look Adopted by Anne Heffron. And I've given away 2 already that I have paid for with my own cash money because I think it is so amazing. And I'm going to be giving away 3 more copies on social media this weekend. And so follow me on Facebook, search Adoptees On Podcast, and then Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Adoptees On. So watch for these on July 1st, which is the actual birthday of the show.